夠嘅法定。
Members, we have formed a quorum. I now call the meeting to order. Please invite the officials to join us.
好，歡迎大家出席呢個。
Welcome to the 14th meeting of the Bills Committee. We'll continue with the scrutiny of Cross 10. It's page C26. Before we ended our last meeting, 3 members were on the waiting list, so they will speak now. Mr. Hui Chi-fung. Thank you, Chairman. So for Clause 6 of this local bill is drafted in accordance with Article 12. And they said that the media should publicize knowledge on the national anthem. The national law doesn't mention what media will be covered. But we are only talking about broadcasting media. So is this just a requirement when it comes to mainland media that a broadcasting organization would broadcast and promote the national anthem? On the face of it, the promotion of and broadcasting of national anthem is not a licensing requirement, and that the media organization would be left to decide what to do. But here in our local domestic bill, it seems that we have a different requirement. So what kind of media organizations are we required to do this, and what's the nature of the requirement? Is it voluntary, or is it a licensing condition? Or if we say we want to copy the same legal requirements in the national law, so what would be the consideration in applying this to local media? On the first point, that the mainland media come under a different structure, and they would do very different things. How different would that be? If this is in the law, the mainland media organization will be doing the things required, but here in Hong Kong, we have to look at the situation with local media. And that's why we want to make use of our existing licensing mechanism, because they are already required to broadcast APIs for the government. And we are doing this to manifest the one country, two system principle. So will only broadcasting organizations in the mainland be regulated by the national anthem law, or is it done through some licensing conditions? And what's the format they adopt? Do they allow the broadcasting or media organizations to produce their own broadcasting material for this purpose? Do you have information to share with us? I don't have detailed information, but I know that the arrangement here are very different, because a media organization would, of course, cover more than broadcasting organizations. There would be the print media, and then there are new media. The national law says that the media should do this and that, and the mainland media would take up the responsibility and do what is required. Exactly what they would do operationally Obviously, this would not be done to meet licensing requirements because they have a very different system for media. When we consider how to draft a cross 10 here in the bill, we have to look at our system. I think you have overdone something. Well, you have to press the button again, Mr. Hui. Mr. Wu Chiwei, I want to clarify something about cross 10. Now we have some requirements, official requirements for the licensee and the broadcaster. We have to broadcast the recordings as required. Are there other conditions apart from the fact that they are required to broadcast it? For example, I want you to do this once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and now you have to do it for 3 hours continuously. Can there be such a condition that in broadcasting or promoting national anthems that they will be subject to further restrictions or the conditions? According to our licensing system, we're talking about voice broadcast and TV broadcast, and there's a difference between free-to-air broadcaster and paid broadcaster. If it's a free-to-air, for every hour, they should not be doing this for more than 1 minute. If it's a paid broadcaster, it would not be more than 1 minute for every 2 hours. That's the requirement in the licensing system. And also for Mr. Wu's assumption, that would involve the amendments of the licensing conditions. Of course, that would require legislative amendments. So when you give out the directives, you would act in accordance with the licensing conditions. We can only issue such directives in accordance with the licensing conditions. Well, when we're talking about free-to-air or broadcast, this bill requires that there should be no alteration or modification of national anthem. But if we are talking about part of a video or part of a broadcast, that would involve the playing of the national anthem. But and if the contents of that particular program that to be broadcast is critical of the country, would it go against the national anthem bill here? Bearing in mind that the entire national anthem would be played without any amendment. Or if the playing of the national anthem is part of the program, as long as the national anthem is played in full and there's no disrespect or shown, then there's no violation of the national anthem law. Well, I was referring to the content of the national anthem vis-a-vis the content of the program as a whole. The national anthem bill will not prohibit the criticism of the national anthem. Next, Elizabeth Kwok. In the last 2 meetings, some members, including the Dr. Kwok Ka-Kay, Mr. Andrew Wan, Dr. Fernando Cheung, and so on, refer to a promotional video clip featuring old woman on a wheelchair who stands up on the playing of the national anthem, and they said that it was a sort of a miracle. We're talking about Cross 10, Ms. Kwok. I received messages of protest from veterans fighters, Dr. Miss Kwong. You should seek another occasion to do this. We are now scrutinizing clause 10. It's about the broadcasting of the national anthem. That promotional video is a broadcast of the national anthem, and someone took advantage of a forum in this council to insult these veteran assistance fighter. And this old woman, aged 86, has fallen sick. And earlier, a number of these veteran fighters came here to protest and asked them to come down to receive their protest letter. And they waited for an hour in a windy weather. And they would like me to convey the protest. I want to raise my stronger objection. I have to stop you. This is not an occasion for protest.
Chairman, if I may come back to the agenda. All along, we've heard many members from the opposition camp resorting to different means to publicly, derogate those people who respect and sing the national anthem, and I don't think that is right. The bill, I think, shows that Hong Kong respects our motherland, and these veterans told me, Miss Kwok, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you here. I think you need to, be relevant to the topic under discussion. Alvin Young, thank you. When we hear the national anthem being played on television, I think this has been in place since 2004, and whenever people hear the national anthem, they know that the news is coming. So this is a long-standing practice, and through existing legislation, this has already been dealt with. So is it really necessary to incorporate in this bill something which we are already practicing and proven effective? Why do you still need to create a provision in this bill to that effect? And also, I understand that also there is no penalty for this clause. So isn't this a duplication? So is it really necessary? And secondly, in future, we know that that's a practice in respect of television broadcast. The other thing is radio broadcast, and also for other TV channels which do not broadcast the national anthem. Now, in future, is it that all radio stations and TV stations which don't broadcast the national anthem will have to broadcast the national anthem pursuant to the legislation? Chairman, I think when we discuss the policy itself, we already dealt with this part. Clause 10 is about, our basic principle. In the national anthem law, there is this requirement, but having considered the local circumstances in our system, we have proposed to deal with it according to our own mechanism. Indeed, many of the government APIs on television have already broadcasted the national anthem, and that's why we've adopted this mechanism, and bearing in mind the local legislation where we enact this bill. This requirement itself is actually follow the licensing conditions between the broadcaster and the communication authority. So the broadcaster will have to comply with the licensing conditions. Any penalties would be provided for under the mechanism of the licensing system. I think earlier there was a question regarding radio stations and other TV, channels which do not broadcast in the news national anthem. When the bill becomes law, would there be any changes? So if there are no arrangements yet, and for the moment, will there be changes in future? Basically, we are following the system, as agreed between the communication authority and the broadcaster, and we'll follow the same system. In future, if any organization should make any mistakes in respect of the broadcasting of the national anthem. So will you be following the agreement between the broadcaster and the communication authority, or will the national anthem ordinance, have would override that agreement? P.S. Under the current system, the broadcaster would need to broadcast the national anthem according to the schedule, provided by the government. If they miss the broadcasting of the national anthem, the communication authority would deal with that. For example, it might invite the broadcaster to make a submission. The broadcasting authority would then consider the relevant factors to see whether there has been a breach. So they would deal with it according to the licensing arrangements. So the national anthem, bill itself doesn't have a role, right, for this act itself. So the national anthem, ordinance will not need to be applied. I think the national anthem law has a provision which says that for the national anthem will be broadcasted, by TV stations, but the implementation will be based on the current system. Jeremy Tam, I'd like to ask whether Clause 10 is based on Section 12 of the National Anthem Law. Yes, both Clauses 12 and 13. Right. My next question is that you are laying down rules for the playing of the national anthem. In a TV program, there would be visual images. Do we need the communication authority to approve the visual image as well? Chairman, the mechanism now is that the licensed broadcaster will be required to broadcast the government API, and the API is provided by the government. They will only provide the time slot to broadcast the API. So even if even the API before the news broadcast is provided by the government, so the TV station will not produce any such materials, right? It won't be so in future as well. Yeah, that's correct. It's the government API. Now, some members have mentioned that if the broadcaster failed to broadcast the national anthem in the stipulated time, whether we have the bill or not, does it mean that the current mechanism will not change? That is, the broadcaster will be invited to make a submission, and in the extreme case, the license might be revoked. So I'd like to ask about the severity of the penalty. So would that change, whether we have or do not have this bill? According to we will deal with it according to the licensing mechanism. When the national anthem bill becomes law, we will still follow the same mechanism. In Clause 4, you say the CMA stipulate the day pursuant to bracket 3. And you may require the broadcaster to broadcast the national anthem during certain specified dates. Do we have that at the moment? Now, so under 3, you say that they can stipulate these dates. So do we already have such dates already, or what? P.S. We do not have any stipulated dates yet. I think the Secretary already said that the GIS every day will provide a time slot for the broadcaster to play government APIs. It's not decided on a day-to-day basis. So subsection 4, does it mean that if the CE believe that on certain special days the national anthem needs to be played, So are you saying that it should be stipulated, the date should be stipulated for the purpose of subsection 3? Is there any document to show which would be the designated date? It could be on a single day, or the CE may stipulate that it's 2 p.m. every Sunday. So how would the public be able to know that such dates have been stipulated so that they can find out whether the TV broadcaster has complied with that or not? Now, if you look at subsection 5 of this clause, it says that that stipulation under subsection 4 must be published in the Gazette, so the public would know. Follow on my earlier question. According to section 18 bracket 2 of the Basic Law, we need to implement local legislation to implement the national anthem law. But I think you've done more than what is required. In the main version of the national anthem law, section 12, it's only a guidance for voluntary compliance. But in Hong Kong, you're making it a statutory licensing conditions. The mainland national anthem law, well, depending on the content to be broadcast, it doesn't say that the materials has to be provided by the government, especially on television. It doesn't say that they have to broadcast the official version, but here we're stipulating that the broadcaster has to broadcast the government's version. So, I would say that you've actually done more than really necessary. To answer his two questions, in the national anthem law, when they use the word should, it's actually mandatory. It's not really a guidance. Secondly, the news media in the mainland are governed by they have to follow the direction or instructions of official ministries and departments. So the situation is different from Hong Kong. So is it then that we must play the government's version and all broadcasters have to become the mouthpiece of the government? So why is it that I cannot broadcast a different version other than the official version of the national anthem? Well, in the case of Hong Kong, we're talking about the government APIs. So the broadcasting of the national anthem in the API is produced by the government. The broadcaster is only responsible for broadcasting that. As for clips produced locally and not by the government, it's not subject to our regulation. I don't think you've answered another question. If you look at section 10 bracket 1, that is, if there are already rules governing the broadcaster, requiring them to broadcast APIs supplied by the government. Now, if there are no such stipulations, they don't apply to the broadcaster. And then when the license are to be renewed, the new added provisions will only apply. That's correct. This is a question regarding the implementation. Does it mean that all broadcasters governed by Section 10 or Clause 10 will be required to broadcast the government MPI, and therefore they must broadcast the national anthem? I invite the Secretary to say, well, under the existing policy, free and paid, free television and sound broadcasting, the broadcasters have to play the government API. So I think the date will need to be, gazetted as reflected in subsection 5 of Clause 10. In subsection 2 and 3, we know that the licensee is compelled to broadcast the government API. Why don't you need this subsection, giving the CE so much power to stipulate certain days that when the national anthem must be played? Well, Well, I think the national anthem is almost being broadcast every day before the news broadcast. Why is it that the CE would need to, designate a date where the anthem must be played? You say that the stipulation must be published in the Gazette as soon as practicable. Why can't we follow the normal procedure to require the broadcaster to do that? Why are we giving the CE so much power here? I think Hui Ji-feng also asked the same question earlier. Perhaps we can have a brief answer. I think the national law, Clause 13 of the national law said that during major, festivals and ceremony days of, then the national anthem will need to be played. To reflect the legislative intent, we are providing a similar arrangement here. If we're talking about special dates, I think you should know well beforehand. For example, National Day, you know which day it is. Through government departments, you can inform the broadcaster well in advance. Why do we need to give such powers to the CEA? Yes. Because to implement the government's requirements, we can only do so through the broadcasting conditions. It doesn't mean that after the Gazette, all the broadcasters have to comply. I think we still need to follow the licensing conditions. I think the real control will be in the licensing conditions. Well, as I said, the licensing authority requires the broadcaster to broadcast the API. So that condition is already there. Why do we still need to give the CE this power to make that Gazette? Isn't it that you can publish all those days so that we don't need a CE to make the designation? Well, normally when we draft any piece of legislation, we want to provide as much flexibility as possible.
Because in fact, some radio stations do not have to fulfill such conditions under their licenses. We want the CE to be given some flexibility to do this. Well, it's not flexibility; it's a special privilege and power. Because under bracket 2 and bracket 3, the rules are clear. They have to comply, and now you've actually given a special power to the CE. Well, under the national law, Article 13, the national anthem has to be played on special occasions. Therefore, in bracket 4, under this clause, we introduce a mechanism whereby a date can be specified if necessary. Well, of course, we understanding the broadcasting of API by broadcasters is a standard practice. Bracket 4 here is to reflect the special occasion required in Article 13 of the national law on national anthem. So the law, this particular provision allows the CE special power. This is not unique in this law. In answering Mr. Leung Yu-chung's questions, the Permanent Secretary said something, and I would like to follow up the replies. For example, under bracket 1 and bracket 3, you can ask the broadcaster to act in accordance with the licensing conditions and to broadcast national anthem. It said that the communications authority can make a determination and also make a direction. Is it that the authority can ask the broadcasters to broadcast a particular API or of whatever duration and on whatever occasions, for example, the specific hours? For example, such as the practice of the mainland media organizations, where the national anthem will be played at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, etc. And each broadcast will last for 3 minutes. But the direction given by the communication authority is to do this in accordance with the timetable arranged by the GIS. That's the existing practice. But the total hour of broadcast is regulated by the licensing conditions. That's why I've asked this question. We all know the existing arrangement, the existing mechanism. There's a sort of understanding, timetable on the arrangement. Let me put it this way. Before the license is renewed, would the decision be made before the license is renewed? For example, you have a special anniversary on a special date. You have some additional requirements incorporated into the arrangement. Under clause 10, subsection 1 and subsection 2, they reflect the existing licensing conditions. The airing of API as arranged by the Government Information Service, and also in and under bracket 4, the CE may stipulate a date for the purpose of subsection 3. And then subsection 3 says the CA, Communications Authority, must make a determination of the direction so that the broadcaster can implement the requirement under subsection 4. I want to clarify a point. What's the difference between making a determination or vis-a-vis making a direction? I know that at present you would make a decision on the timetable that's related to the licensing arrangement, licensing system. What would the CA be determining? Time, location, time, frequency? I'll defer to Ms. Pang. Determination and direction are terms used in the current licenses. Mr. Chu Hoi Teck, first round, 4 minutes. Mr. Gary Fan, second round, 3 minutes. I'm concerned about subsection 4. In clause 10, the CE may stipulate a date for the purposes of subsection 3. It's not something to be done by the CE in council, or there's no need to consult the executive council. So I have a question about the consistency, because in clause 5, part 2, in respect of the occasions where national prayer would be played, and that is clause 5, it says the CE in council may by notice published in the Gazette amend the schedule on the occasions on which national anthem must be played and sung, and also again in another provision that is 1C, the occasion and the purpose of playing the national anthem. Again, it has to be something decided by the CE in council. So why suddenly for this particular subsection in clause 10, there's no need for the CE to consult the executive council? I expect the official may say that this is found in other laws, but I'm not trying to get some examples in other laws. I just want to know the rationale, the thinking behind this such difference. whether it should be CE or the CE in council, or whether it should be subsidiary legislation. We will look at the nature of the matter under consideration. For example, occasions whereby the national anthem is to be played and sung, and also in respect of offense of a misuse of national anthem. All these will carry penalties. That's why we ask the CE in council to make the decision. But here we're saying that on a certain date, it would be appropriate to broadcast to the national anthem in the form of an API. Then it would be up to the CE to make the decision. By looking at the nature of the matter, we believe that it is not necessary for the decision to be made by the CE in council. And well, for Part 3, misuse of national anthem, there will be a penalty. But if you look at Part 4, other provisions, there are other stipulations without any penalty. But just like this subsection 4 in clause 10, I think for Schedule 3, the occasions and also the stipulation of a day for broadcasting the TV API is of a different nature. For the occasions in question, we are talking about official ceremonies and functions, and in the future there will be a revision to the schedule. People may have different views, therefore it will take the CE in council to come a decision, and that will be the gazetto of notice. And now we're talking about different things of a different nature. It's about the broadcasting of TV API. The legal advisor would like to offer some comment. Well, Schedule 3 is a piece of subsidiary legislation, and Article 55 states that the CE has to consult the Executive Council in tabling subsidiary legislation to this council. But the stipulation in subsection 4 of clause 10 is not subsidiary legislation, so there's not a mandatory requirement to do this through the Executive Council. Mr. Jeremy Tam, question about bracket 4. It says the CE may stipulate a date, so it's about the date and not the time. For example, we stipulate on a certain day the national anthem should be broadcast. So is he confined to just specifying the day but not the time? It's correct. It's just about the date, not the time. Isn't this a bit strange? You may specify a date. It can be done in the small hours, 1 a.m., in the midday, or at night. It doesn't make a lot of sense. If the national anthem is played before the news broadcast, you have a specific time. You say that you don't need to regulate this. The CA, Communications Authority, would tell them what to do, and it will be done. Then we don't need this subsection, because it says the CE may stipulate that on a certain day the national anthem should be played, and you have been broadcasting the API before the news report. And now it's strange. You only allow the CE to choose the date but not the time. Secretary, the reason is that the present mechanism can deal with the time slot. So we talk about the stipulation of the date in this subsection. Well, actually, the existing mechanism can handle the question with the date as well. We just want to make it clear. If there's a need, we want to have a mechanism to implement the subsection 3. You don't need this if what the Secretary has told us is already there. Under the existing mechanism, they will have to broadcast the API when you ask them to. Now you are saying that the CE may stipulate the date, but not the time during the day. You say that during the existing mechanism, the CA can ask them to broadcast it at a certain hour. So what's the purpose of this? Well, this subsection is to reflect Article 13 of the national law, and we can handle the hour, the time, under the existing mechanism. So that's why we have bracket 4, which talk about the date only. Dr. Kokake, we know now that this is a piece of vicious legislation because other countries with national with law or national anthem would not have a lot of penalties, even if it's breached. We are told that we have asked that even if we are to implement national laws, we should not adopt provisions with unclear, ambiguous wording.
Clause 10 subsection 4 is rather excessive because it delegates the authority to the CE when implementing subsection 3. That is, when the communication authority issues a license, then the CE can stipulate a day for the national anthem to be played through a government API. So you're giving the CE unrestrained power, and nobody has, has done that elsewhere. Even Section 13 of the National Anthem Law stipulates the National Day, Labor Day, and the broadcasting stations will follow the state council stipulated dates to broadcast the national anthem. So the broadcasting ministry and the broadcaster already have that authority, and they will not ask Xi Jinping or the premier to stipulate the time. But now we are proposing to give such power to the CE. So this is not right. You said the CE will, try. Will publish it in the Gazette as practical, as soon as practicable. Now, under the one country, two system policy, I don't think we need to, blindly follow whatever is done in the mainland. I think they have, occasions like the 1st of August to commemorate the establishment of the PLA, or you won't have a special commemorative day for Xi Jinping's birthday. Just because you want to please your superior, you may want to exhaust. If you want to stipulate dates like October 1st or July 1st, fine. But then you cannot simply stipulate a certain commemorative day Xi Jinping came to power, or Xi Jinping a day to commemorate is becoming the president, because we can never guess when the CE is going to really, try to please, his superiors. I think this is actually outside the scope of Clause 13. Clause 13 refer to, important dates like the National Day and so on. But she's doing here. I think you're doing more than what is being practiced in the mainland. No, I don't quite get your question. I'm simply saying that the power proposed to be given to CE is not subject to any restriction and is not compatible with Section 13 of the National Anthem Law. Are you saying that the decision shouldn't rest with the CE, but rather a government department instead should do that? I don't think even in the mainland they will not, just designate any day. It doesn't say in Hong Kong. I think you can stipulate certain, important dates. That I can understand. P.S. Actually, under the national flag and national emblem ordinance, there is already such an arrangement that the CE may, decide when the national flag and national emblem will be displayed. Pursuant to Clause 10 of the national anthem and national flag law ordinance, it's already there. What I'm saying is that the CE has so much discretion to designate any date for the national anthem to be played. I think you may press the button again. Kong Chun-yu. Regarding subsection 3 and 4, the CE may designate a date for the anthem to be played. Is there a requirement on number of times that the anthem should be played? I've answered that already. Under subsection 4, a date will be stipulated as to the time slot during which it's going to be played. We will follow the mechanism under the broadcasting ordinance. What about frequency? How about, once in the morning and once in the evening? I think here we're only referring to the date. So you're only prescribing the date. Subsection 3 and 4 only prescribe the date. Can the CE require the national anthem to be played twice on the stipulated date? He said there is no stipulation regarding the frequency. Well, in that case, my question is very clear. In the past, we were told that we need to trust the CE, but then we have had CE who is very, very, narrow-minded and, for example, refused to grant a license to an applicant for a TV license. That assuming you have a CE who is so narrow-minded, instructing the TV station to, keep repeating playing the national anthem, let's say 200 times during prime time. You may say this will not happen, but according to this bill, there is no stipulation regarding frequency. The CE may say during prime time you should start playing the national anthem from 7 p.m. all the way up to 10 p.m. Does the bill place any restriction on the CE to actually control the TV station like that? Of course, this scenario may not happen, but just in case we have such a narrow-minded, CE by the name of Leung who would do that. So how are we going to deal with that? What about the frequency? Is there any stipulation here? The bill does not provide for that, but the members might have joined the meeting late. Earlier, we've already explained that under the licensing conditions, the free TV broadcaster cannot broadcast more than 1 minute of government API. For pay TV, no more than 1 minute for every 2 hours. So the licensing conditions already govern the frequency of the broadcast. And other than the national anthem, there are lots of other information which the government wishes to broadcast to the public. So there's no restriction as far as Clause 10 is concerned. Yes, I think that's a good follow-up, because very often two separate, ordinances may apply to the same scenario. So my concern is not unwarranted. We did have, for example, a very, very narrow-minded CE who, he may deliberately, require you to broadcast the national anthem in this manner, and during 1 hour, the free TV broadcaster cannot broadcast more than 1 minute of government API. So there might be a dispute as to whether or not the national anthem law involves public interest. So the question is, which is the broadcasting ordinance or the national anthem ordinance? Which one would have, would override the other? Well, we do have licensing conditions, which is a contract binding the communication authority and the broadcaster. I don't think the question has been answered. Okay, Chairman, could you help me follow up on my early question whether the CMA require the broadcaster to continuously broadcast the anthem. Leung Yo Chung. Just now, Mr. Martin Liu, the chairman, said that drafting similar to subsection 3 and 4 and 5 can be found in other ordinances. I understand that because there could be scenarios that we cannot think of now. So, but in the bill, subsection 2 and 3, there is already protection given. I'd like to ask the Secretary this question. Every day before the news, the national anthem is being played already. So I don't know why we still need the CE to publishing Gazette the designated days for the anthem to be played. I don't think that's really necessary. It's already being done every day already. And some members already asked, unless you stipulate the time. Otherwise, this doesn't serve any purpose. I don't see any scenario. I mean, right now, from Monday to Sunday, the national anthem is already being played daily. There's no days on which we miss the playing of the national anthem. I think the arrangement for the broadcasting of the API is that the GIS will supply the materials to the broadcaster. The broadcaster will broadcast the API accordingly, and these API contain not just the national anthem alone, but other materials. So we hope that if we could deal with it under the existing mechanism, we will do that. But in subsection 4, we've added this provision because in the national law, Section 13, Clause 13, it said that on certain dates, the State Council may prescribe during certain hours the playing of the national anthem. And that's why we are now introducing a mechanism that is the CE may stipulate the date if necessary. But the playing of the national anthem will follow the current licensing mechanism. I don't think we should blindly the national anthem law. If you don't consider the local circumstances, why don't you simply copy the national anthem law? You have to bear in mind the local circumstances. If we simply blindly copy the practice in the mainland is not right. Furthermore, you can stipulate the dates now. When the licenses are being issued, you can stipulate the specified dates and include them in the license. So why is it necessary that you have this proposal, Mr. Leung? Obviously, we are not blindly copying the national anthem law. Otherwise, the bill wouldn't look like this. And that's why we said under the one country, two system scenario, we've come with the arrangement. I've explained already that we are introducing this mechanism here because the State Council has such, requirements. Dr. Cheng Chung Tai, 3 minutes. Thank you. Clause 10. It's about inclusion in sound broadcasting and domestic television program services, but I think the entire clause doesn't say that it applies to local free TV and pay TV. Is it that Section 10, Clause 10 will also govern, pay TV licenses? In subsection 6, there is a definition. That is a license granted under Cap 562. 562 would include paid and free television. If that's the case, the corresponding broadcasting ordinance, for example, Schedule 4, refer to, free TV service, for example, for materials supplied by the government, the hours, and so on. In Schedule 5, reference is made to paid TV service, and some of the materials supplied by the government are exempted for the free TV broadcaster. For Section 10, if it applies to paid and free TV broadcaster, then Schedule 4 and 5 of the Broadcasting of Ordinance, Section 55, for example, you may need to amend that as well, right? Schedule 5 of that. P.S. The National Anthem Bill, if it became law, will not require any amendment of the Broadcasting Ordinance or the Broadcasting License Ordinance. Now, if for free TV broadcasters, if this is already the licensing condition, but for the paid TV broadcaster, there is no similar arrangement or requirement. Why is it now that for the government API and the national anthem, why you don't need to amend Schedule 5? I just don't understand. P.S. For the local pay TV license, we require the broadcaster to broadcast government APIs. I'm sorry. I just thought to follow up on this further. Is it that for the local pay TV broadcaster and the free TV broadcaster, regarding the government programs, the rules are the same? Any difference, P.S.? I think that's been answered earlier, but please, to repeat again, for the pay TV operator, they also need to, broadcast materials supplied by the government. There's no difference.
3分鐘。
Dr. Kwok, 3 minutes. Well, let's not cause confusion. At present, it's not a violation of the law if the API is not broadcast. Now, with the National Anthem Bill passed, and then we have the limitless power of the CE. It's just like hanging a knife over the heads of the broadcasters. And first of all, I don't know how you interpret the one country, two systems principle. If we follow whatever the State Council has stipulated in terms of the dates, would that still be the principle one country, two systems? In clause 10, if some broadcaster, for whatever reason, fails to comply, it will not be an offense committed under the national anthem law, but it would be a breach of the licensing conditions. But we need to look into the actual circumstances of Hong Kong, and therefore we want to give this power to the CE. It's just like the national anthem law, national emblem law, and national flag law. Well, if this is done in consultation with the Executive Council, it would be better because people may advise him or her in the Executive Council, and the consultation with this council would also be a better arrangement. But now the CE is allowed to stipulate many days, much more than what the State Council may provide. We have the localized version of a CCTV network. But if the broadcaster is independent of the government, taking away the license would be even more serious. So this would be a very serious threat to the broadcaster if it doesn't broadcast the national anthem during the specified occasions or during the specified time. Please clarify the existing licensing system and whether there will be any change before and after the enactment of the National Anthem Bill in respect of the playing and the broadcasting of the National Anthem. Is there going to be any change before and after this bill is passed into law? The licensing system will not be changed in it. So you're saying that at present, if they do not broadcast the national anthem, their license will be revoked? Let me say this again. We are using the existing mechanism to handle such matters. Under the existing licensing mechanism, the licensed broadcasters have to broadcast APIs provided by the government, and these APIs will include those on national anthem. In the future, this will be the mechanism that we rely on. Ms. Claudia Mo is about cross 10 2, sorry, it's cross 2 bracket 3. According to the secretary, the word government is stressed. In bracket 10 bracket 3, the government API is called an announcement in the public interest. And also for the Chinese publicity video, government video clip is rendered into the material in the public interest. So it's either governmental or official. But you are talking about public interest. I think this is a rather shameless way to translate the terms. Ms. Pang. Mr. Look will respond to the questions. Ms. Claudia Mo has referred to the two terms, announcement in the public interest or material in the public interest. The terms are used in the relevant licenses. These terms are frequently, routinely used in the media sector. So it's API announcement in the public interest. So we just provide the corresponding terms here. Well, in the licensing conditions, you call these announcement in the public interest. For example, when there's a pandemic, you advise people to wash their hands regularly, or you can advise people to love animal, or nice to animal. But now we're talking about a patriotic law, national anthem bill. It's not. It's really misleading. You are trying to cheat people by calling this AI something in the public interest. How can you relate national anthem to public interest? As the DOJ colleague has said, we're using the same terms in the license in the licenses. And second, the promotion of national anthem and the protection of the dignity of the national anthem are in the public interest, in my view. Well, this is this is political. There's a big difference to the advice to people to wash hands and promote animal welfare. You know that there's always a superior being looking down at what we are doing. Well, the national anthem has to do with the dignity of the country. I think any citizen will understand this. Of course, an API to promote the love of animal is certainly something done in the public interest. Well, I shouldn't say anything about the Elizabeth Kwok's criticism of me. Well, you have stopped her, but I think for the record, I would like to clarify that whatever I express, however I express my views, that there was no disregard of the veteran fighters of fighting in the anti-Japanese war. Now that she has, it's said that the woman has fallen sick. Well, I have to tell you that I didn't know that they have ever asked me to do anything to see them. And it's said that all licensed broadcasters have to make such a API and broadcast already, including API for the national anthem, and the bracket 4 gives an additional, clear additional power to the CE. And under bracket 5 is envisaged that sometimes it will not be practicable to publish the determination or the stipulation in the Gazette. So the CE, I can imagine, would then may make a decision to broadcast the national anthem on any specific occasion. We already have the national anthem broadcast before the news programs. So we are talking about ad hoc days. For example, there's a visit by a national leader, and then would the broadcasters be asked to play or broadcast the national anthem? Why is there a need to give the CE this special power? Well, this question has been answered, but anyway, please succinctly respond again. Article 13 of the National Anthem Law has such an arrangement, so we want to introduce a mechanism that we may need to trigger if necessary. Well, even if it's in the National Anthem Law, it doesn't mean that we must have something similar. Mr. Gary Fan, which round is it for me? The third round. At the last Bills Committee meeting, some members asked that the CE want to broadcast the national anthem for 5 minutes on a special date. And the government official said that the CE might stipulate that the national anthem would have to be played on a certain day, but the time would be managed under the existing licensing mechanism. That is to say, not more than 1 minute in an hour. So it can be 1 minute for every hour during the day, so 24 times in a day. Well, the licensing conditions are already stipulated in the existing licenses. So theoretically, we can have 1 minute of API every hour, and theoretically, the API can be the national anthem. So we can broadcast 24 minutes for every day, 24 hours of the day. Theoretically, yes, but we have not been able to, we have no need to have this, to do this. But in the future, we may have a situation whereby it will be broadcast every hour. Well, the broadcasters are now required to broadcast government APIs. The contents of the API that will be those released by the Government Information Service. So we can broadcast an API asking people to wash hands 24 minutes in a day, depending on the need. Theoretically, that's possible. But this is a very simple question. But I just don't understand why we haven't been able to we haven't been able to get a clear answer. For example, local TV channels already broadcast APIs. So in a way, you have already got the broadcast time. You have purchased the broadcast time. And how you can utilize the time is decided by the GIS. If you want to have more broadcast, it's up to you. But I don't understand why you need to specify a date. APIs are broadcast every day. So there's no need to exercise the power in bracket 4 because you're already doing it daily. Well, in the real world, the APIs may be omitted, or then they will make up for you later. But of course, if they shortchange you every day, then when it comes to the time of renewal, license renewal, you will have to consider many factors, including this omission on the part of the broadcaster. Well, the existing mechanism allows you to do it 24 times every day, but you're not doing it. So Mr. Chen is asking this question. If this can be done by the ISD, so why do you still need subsection 4? As I've explained, we need to have a mechanism for the stipulation of the day. This is to reflect the Article 13, that is, of the National Anthem Law, that on special occasions there may be a need to stipulate that on a certain day the national anthem would be broadcast. That would
Secretary, just one point. Every day, well, under the broadcasting contract, this is already provided for. If anyone should breach, nobody would be breaching this section, this clause. Dr. Chang, 2 minutes. I don't want to, drag further on the same point. But according to Schedule 5 of the Broadcasting Ordinance, that is a supplementary provision for paid television. Schedule 4, which is about local free TV, programs. Provisions in Schedule 4, subsection 2, 3, and 10, are exemptions. 2, 3, 10, 11. Subsection 3 is about TV programs supplied by the government. My question is that Clause 10 of the National Anthem Bill, if you incorporated under sound broadcasting, in Schedule 3, Schedule 4, and 5, for the broadcasting ordinance, especially in respect of local pay TV programs, you are bracket 2, 3, 10, 11. So my question is whether for local pay TV programs, the ordinance does not have the same requirements as applicable to pay TV broadcasters. Yes, requiring local pay TV broadcaster to broadcast the API. It's already a licensing condition now. That is for every 2 hours they should broadcast 1 minute of government API. Now, does that mean that, well, supplementary provision in Schedule 4 and 5, is it that they are totally irrelevant to the national anthem law? I think the member referred to Schedule 4, that is TV programs supplied by the government, is not within the scope of the bill. That's about program and not API. It's not for the purpose of the national anthem. Chairman, here you include the part concerning the promotion of the national anthem. Isn't there a gray area? Mr. Chifong, let me follow up on the question of frequency. The Secretary said that right now the broadcaster has to broadcast government API anyway. You can broadcast many times the API appealing to people to wash their hands. I think the public's concern is justified because they wouldn't worry that you have to broadcast the API about washing hands, many times. But they are worried that just in order to please a state leader, you will unreasonably play the national anthem many times. To address that concern, the requirements under subsection 2 and 3, shouldn't you say that it should be, there should be, play within a reasonable time slot and a reasonable frequency? I think regarding Mr. Hui's point, here we are talking about APIs, that is the broadcasting of the national anthem on television. You're asking whether under the existing mechanism we should set a limit restriction so that we don't broadcast we shouldn't broadcast the national anthem too many times. I don't see any reason for that. I'm saying the public we're not worried that you broadcast too many APIs concerning caring for the animals, but for this one it could be political in nature, and they're worried that you might broadcast them too frequently. You say at any reasonable time, you can provide for that it shouldn't be stipulate, that it should be played within reasonable time and frequency. So I think we are dealing with it under the existing mechanism, and we've already explained that this is the appropriate approach. Mr. Hui talk about other APIs, the public may not be so concerned, but if we broadcast the national anthem too frequently, the public will be concerned. I don't really accept that attitude. 4 minutes. Thank you. Sorry, I was attending another meeting, so if my point hasn't been raised, please let me know. Looking at the national anthem law, there are certain stipulated dates where the national anthem must be played, whereas in Hong Kong, in our bill, this is not provided for. Now, my question is whether when TV stations broadcast national anthems in the mainland, do they really follow? Do they only broadcast the national anthem law on the date stipulated, and the frequency would be far less than Hong Kong, where the national anthem is played frequently? So, are you aware of the mainland mechanism? We don't have the information offhand. Please give us a reply in writing. So my question is that clause 10, subsection 4 and 5, well, I think in Hong Kong, the frequency, at which the national anthem is being played is already, more intense than the mainland. Together with subsection 4 and 5, is it that the government would want the flexibility so that the CE can demand that the national anthem be played more frequently, or is it the CE would like to have some flexibility regarding the dates, and it's not about frequency? I think that point has been answered many times already. Now, what we're saying under, subsection 4, our consideration is that perhaps on certain dates, those are special dates we want to highlight, and that the national anthem be played on those dates. And that's why we're introducing this mechanism so that we can do this. And as for the every day at different time slots, we are already playing the API, which actually is the playing of the national anthem. I think we will continue to follow the existing mechanism. It's not that we are proposing to increase the frequency. I asked about the condition in the mainland. I'm not asking whether you want to increase the frequency. But in the localization of the national anthem law, we make reference of the mainland version. That is, on certain important dates, the anthem must be played. So is it possible that in future, now the government may think that we need to play the national anthem more frequently, but 5-10 years from now, we may need to align with the practice in the mainland and stipulate that, So is it that That's the practice in the mainland. When you enact local legislation, you should make reference of the arrangement in the mainland, so the public will know that there is a flexibility, that these are the minimum requirement, and there's a possibility that the national anthem could be played even less frequently. Right now, you are simply, adopting what is in the national anthem law, but the national anthem law only stipulates certain dates. Secretary, 2 questions. First of all, we will be relying on the existing mechanism. That is, what government API will be played and frequency, that is determined by the government. So it's not the issue. I think we've more or less exhausted our discussion on this clause. I'd like to now, ask members who have yet to speak to give an indication that they would like to speak, because otherwise I'll be cutting the line at 12:30. Fernando Jiang. Well, I've said many times that for our Bills Committee, you shouldn't be drawing a line. I'd like to put on record that I do not accept it. I think you should allow members to exhaust all the questions that they would like to ask. Fernando Jiang. The Secretary kept saying that Clause 10 gives the CE so much power and discretion because you make reference of the National Anthem law, where there is a similar arrangement. But in the National Anthem law, there are many things there which we have not adopted, even Clause 1. That is, implement the socialist, core values. 15, playing the national anthem where we want to. So we just encourage people to do that. Clause 10, we're not adopting Clause 9, 14, and 11, incorporated into primary secondary education as part of the patriotic education. I think we have not adopted that. So things which are not applicable shouldn't be adopted. So I don't think there is a need here, because the broadcasting ordinance already requires the broadcasters to play the national anthem on specified dates and hours, and yet you are giving the CE additional discretion. Yeah, I don't think you can justify yourself. I think the question has been answered many times already. I think Dr. Jiang already explained that when we drafted the local legislation, we've considered where we need to adopt the national anthem law, the provision national law, and where we do not need to. And here, the national anthem law said that the news media must actively promote the national anthem law. If we follow that, we would have a similar requirement for our news media in Hong Kong. But we follow the local mechanism. That's why we follow the local system. Regarding the stipulation of the dates, in subsection 4, other than what is provided for, this is provided for in the national anthem law, there is a similar arrangement and mechanism in the national flag and national anthem ordinance. Alvin Yeo, sorry, Charles. So I hope that the chairman will remind me if this point has been raised already. Looking at Clause 10, my first question is that the Telecommunication Authority, they are responsible for, implementing the ordinance. Under what criteria do they determine the frequency or the arrangement? Would they have any difficulty because the Communication Authority, being the communication regulator, would it be difficult for them to impose such regulation? Would you help them? In other words, any difficulties encountered when we implement the current mechanism? Yes. Well, CA will issue directions inviting the broadcaster to follow the timetable provided for by the GIS. Regarding the frequency of the broadcast of the playing of the national anthem, that arrangement is made by the GIS. But this is not shown in the bill. I'm referring to the bill, and I see that you make reference of the CA. Are you saying that the CA simply relay the requirement of the GIS? Well, that's been raised and answered already. According to the current arrangement, the CA issued a direction requesting the news media to broadcast which government API on stipulated schedules. So they would have to follow that, and the licensee will simply broadcast the API according to the proposed timetable. I'm sorry, I don't know whether this has been raised before. Of course, on television, I see the national anthem being played. I've not really heard the national anthem being played on radio broadcasts. So let's not ask why at the moment. For AM and FM transmission, I think RTHK is not even regulated by the Communication Authority. I think BS would know this very well. For RTHK, so when do we hear the playing of the national anthem on the radio? According to the current licensing conditions, radio stations are not required to play the national anthem.
So the audio API provided to the RTHK do not include the national anthem. How about other commercial radio stations? So actually the Clause 10 is really about TV broadcasters. Well, this is a new law. We are going to ask radio stations to broadcast the national anthem, but this can only be done through the licensing conditions. That is to say, you have to wait until the license is up for requirements. Of course, if the broadcasters agree, we can, of course, change the agreement. To follow up on the last question of Mr. Charles Mock, will the government going to ask radio stations to comply with the requirement of playing or broadcasting the national anthem? Are you going to wait until the broadcasting licenses are due for renewal, or when are you going to ask them to update the agreements? Any voice broadcaster, commercial voice broadcasters in Hong Kong will be required to broadcast audio API of the government. Now it's already done. It's already allowed under the licensing system. So thank you for your clarification. After the national anthem bill is enacted, would there be any timetable that you will start to do this, require these radio stations to do this through the provision of audio, the API prepared by the GIS will ask the radio stations to start to broadcast the national anthem? Maybe I've got a problem with in understanding. Yes, they need to broadcast something from the government every hour. It can be about animal, the welfare, or healthcare. It's determined by the GIS. I'll give you back your time. Understand the radio stations do not broadcast the national anthem now. When will this become something that has to be broadcast by the radio station? I'm talking about radio stations, not TV broadcasters. We would, after the enactment of this law, we would, as soon as possible, release audio APIs for the national anthem through the GIS as soon as possible. At present, the civil education is responsible for the promotion of the national anthem. Hong Kong is a capitalist society, and of course the mainland, the PRC, is a socialist country. It would have to promote socialism as its core value. So in the future, how can we make sure that the capitalist system in Hong Kong will not be affected while we promote the core value under the specialist, the special socialist system on the mainland? Secretary. Well, the national anthems broadcast through the TV stations will be sufficient to help people understand the importance and the significance of the national anthem. The question raised by Mr. Alvin Young is rather difficult to answer. I'll draw the line here. Those who want to ask questions, please press the button now. Mr. Charles Mock, 3 minutes. I've just heard that it's not done by radio station now, but with the enactment of the national anthem bill, you are going to ask them to do it. Would it be the GIS that would decide when to start, or the frequency of such a broadcast? Is it up to GIS? Do you have any idea? And RTHK is not going to be regulated under this law. Would the RTHK be expected to do similar things with a similar frequency? And what about TV channels of the RTHK? They are not regulated by the broadcast ordinance. Or maybe I'm not a frequent viewer. I've not seen the broadcast of national anthem in the digital TV channels. For channel 31, at 10:30 p.m. before the news report, the clip of national anthem will be played. RTHK is not regulated by the broadcasting ordinance, but as a government department, one of the mission of the RTHK is to promote and the national identity. If this is their mission, would they ask them to do more, to broadcast more frequently the national anthem? Commercial broadcasters may not be doing this. I think we'll adopt the same practice as commercial broadcasters. Are you going to assist the GIS to make a decision? Or is it up to the officials in the GIS to decide what to do? Well, the previous director of information service is sitting next to me. We have only got limited time for such APIs. It's a competitive process. Secretary, what TV APIs will be broadcast and how frequently will be decided by the government as a whole. The GIS is responsible for implementing the arrangement. Mr. Kwong Chun-yu, 3 minutes. Please switch on my mic. please switch on the mic of Mr. Kwong. I have a follow-up question. Once this bill is enacted, when are you going to send the API to the broadcasters, to the TV stations? I know that this is being done by TV stations under their licenses, but I have never heard radio stations doing this. Do you have a timetable when the new API will be forwarded to the radio stations? We would complete the production as soon as possible after the bill is enacted. Can you give us some idea? Is this going to be the entire national anthem, or is it going to be just a part of it? Well, it's being produced, but it will certainly be the full national anthem. Would there be any other creativity parts added by the GIS? Let's say it's the national anthem, and we are talking about radio station. You are going to need to have the audio introduction. Otherwise, it would be rather awkward if you don't have anything and it's just the national anthem first. Can you share with us whether you've got any production issues to handle, and what would be considered in the production? Well, as the Permanent Secretary said, the audio clip, audio API will be provided to the radio stations after the production is done. If members have comments and suggestions, please let us know. Are you going to follow the practice of the TV? At present, we know that on the count of 5 seconds, the national anthem will be played before the news report. Are you going to be in the middle of a talk show, or at the beginning or the end of a program, radio program? We haven't made a decision yet. Well, you know that for radio programs that they would count down the program host will be given 5 seconds to round up or round. Would you be in a rush because of the requirement in the law? Well, we would forward the audio video clip to the radio stations as soon as possible. Well, I have to criticize you for arranging this meeting in such a haze. Don't count towards my time. Well, we count everything. All right. There's another meeting on obscene indecent articles. I should be able to ask 5 rounds of questions, so now you have joined the line. Do we need to work so closely with the government? Yes, I have questions. And I think that the web broadcasters are not covered, because the webcasters do not need to be licensed, right? Your understanding is correct. But you want to upgrade or promote civil awareness and identity. Well, you want to control the ideology here. We have the former director of information service here. You want to foster this sense of national identity. Soon the government websites and the personal page of the CE be broadcasting this every hour, especially the GIS. during my time, the GS would help reporters to get information from the government, and now it's just a government department. It's a puppet of the government. On the question of the number of times it's been answered, please briefly repeat your answer. Oh, we have noted the suggestions. Now, GIS doesn't deserve the title of information service. It's just like the CPG's propaganda department. I was referring to the 1980s when I became a reporter. The GIS was very helpful. We have Mrs. Yao, Lei Qian, and then we have Miss Zhang Manyi. And those after the 1990s, nothing in comparison. So can we not have so cramped a meeting schedule? I make that decision. Yes. We have now overlapping meeting times. If you follow the suggestion of Ms. Mo, can we have the national anthem played in a kind of loop that would be against the law, I suppose? And according to the secretary, cross 10 bracket 4 is a suitable localization measure. I beg to differ. Why?
If we need to adapt clause 12 and 13 of the National Anthem law, for section 12, we can actually rely on the licensing conditions. You say you don't want to force the media, so you rely on the license conditions. In bracket 4, I think this should actually tally with clause 13, and Article 13 said that you need to designate certain days on which the national anthem must be played. The state councils, the broadcasting ministry will prescribe the timing and not the dates. In bracket 4 and 5, you're saying that the CE should prescribe the date, and I don't think that is a proper adaptation. If in the mainland they designate a date, I think you can already do that through the licensing conditions. In order to match national anthem law, you can say that the CE can, for the purpose of implementing subsection 3, prescribe the timing for the broadcasting. I think that would be more appropriate. Chairman, I think it's the same principle. When we enact the local legislation, we need to invoke the local mechanism, and we deal with it through the local mechanism. Article 13 of the National Anthem Law refers to major, festivals or statutory, stipulated dates. We are not saying some of the, festivals in the mainland may not be our festivals. Instead, if we have a mechanism, we provide for some dates where we think the national anthem must be played, and we would have a mechanism to do that. And the mechanism is actually, based on the same spirit as those for the national flag and national emblem ordinance. Other than the Gazette will actually stipulate the date. What about the timing of the broadcast? I think we already said that we follow the existing mechanism. Hui Chi-feng, 1 minute. I think, have you consulted RTHK regarding Article 10? Have they raised any concern or objection? I didn't hear that clearly. He said no. The answer is no. So you did not consult RTHK. Why not? Why didn't you consult RTHK? Shouldn't you have consulted the RTHK? We have not consulted any other media organization, including RTHK. So you have not consulted the current licensees. Because all the licensed broadcasters, we would deal with this according to the licensing conditions. As I said, RTHK also would broadcast government APIs. Well, I'd like to pursue this further. Why didn't you consult the RTHK? There is no requirement to broadcast the national anthem, but now there is no requirement. They are commercial organizations. If you require them to make the broadcast, they'll have less time for other purposes. Well, the licensee have to provide some time slot for the government. But I think they will have less time for advertisements if you have this mandated requirement. Gary Fan. Oh, you want to call division? Okay, please ring the bell.
或者嗱，或者我趁呢個機會咧。
Perhaps I will take this opportunity to say this to members. We have 2 days for our council sitting and half a day for the House Committee and the FC. All other committee meetings cannot clash with the sitting and the House Committee meeting. Okay, if you don't want to listen, then let's be it. Why don't you let me finish? On weekdays, if we don't convene a meeting, if we clash with other committee meetings, and I think that we may as well not have any meetings at all. And the question of clashing schedule is not a problem just for this Bills Committee. So for members who've joined the Bills Committee meeting should try the best to, within those 2 or even 4 hours, try the best to ask the questions that you have prepared. Chairman, I'm not saying that this is the first time we need to deal with this scenario. Last time it was even worse. 3 panels met at the same time. So just now, whether it's complaint or by member, they are actually concurrently holding 2 meetings. They're running from one meeting to another, trying the best to join the queue. I've attended the meeting at the start, and even after you've joined the line, I still have 2 or 3 questions to raise. I understand. You have to try your best to accommodate. If members have questions to ask, you have to exercise discretion, allow them to do that. They've already explained their rationale. I have more than one occasion actually been, attending 3, committee meetings at the same time. I will always try to, make arrangements to raise my questions at those 3 meetings. If I've joined a committee, I would need to come up with the arrangement. Well, this is not ideal, and I hope you understand.
下一位係范國威。
Next, Mr. Gary Fan, 1 minute. Well, just this is a hypothetical scenario. Earlier, members asked about the CE's stipulation of a day when the national anthem would need to be played. Would it be possible that the anthem would be played 20 times a day, 1 minute each? Would that scenario arise? On the other hand, is there the possibility that, say, on October 1st, the CE would like the national anthem to be played, or even 24 times in a day, and even more than 1 minute each time? How would the government deal with that? Can clause 10 deal with that? Chairman, subsection 4 is about the CE stipulating the date. As for the timing of the playing, that we will follow the current mechanism. Fernando Zhao, Chairman. I think we've already stated our position. We don't think the CE should be given that extra discretion. Our legal advisor had also asked the question, that is, the CE in stipulating such dates, what are the factors that he or she would take into consideration? Your answer is that the CE will, in the light of Hong Kong circumstances, come to the decision. I don't know what that means. Could you give us some examples as to when the CE would think that it's necessary that she would need to increase the dates, number of days on which the national anthem would be played? Chairman, I've already said that we are introducing this mechanism. Could you give some examples? I am asking a very specific question. Give me some examples. Under what circumstances does the CE need to prescribe additional dates? If on certain dates we believe that the national anthem should be played, then the CE will do that. I don't think that's the answer. He's already answered the question that this is only to provide the flexibility for the CE. I think that question has been answered many times already. Hui Chi-fung. So the point of order. I hope you allow me to answer this question. My question has only been, that is, when you stipulate the frequency of the playing of the national anthem, I think the broadcaster have not been consulted. I think perhaps I can give you an answer in writing. Now, if it's an important question and it has not been raised by other members, why won't you let me, ask my question? I think you shouldn't have drawn the line in the first place. I do not accept that. Every member may have questions which have not been raised by others to raise. If I give you that discretion, I will need to, give discretion to the others. I've already drawn the line, and you were here when I did that. I would like to invite you to submit that in writing to the Secretary of the Bills Committee, requesting the administration for an answer. Our next meeting, the clerk will inform members of the day of our next meeting. At the next meeting, we'll start scrutinizing clause 11.
唔講，我哋下一次再審議。OK， 第11條。
We'll do it next time. We'll deal with clause 11. There's nothing AOB. Meeting's adjourned.